welcome to today's episode of Healthy Living, Happy Life. I'm Denise Stegall, your podcast host. I'm the menopause mentor and longevity concierge. And today I am going to talk to you about something that is actually pretty new to me. I've titled this episode, Hip Pain, Hormones, and Healing. What your tendons are trying to tell you. I know I come up with these crazy things, don't I? Anyway, so let's talk about hip pain, right? As we get older, we start to have these aches and pains, and they're like, oh, we always think it's arthritis. Oh, my aching knees, my aching joints. Well, a couple of months ago, I was in pain, deep, achy kind of pain. Couldn't get comfortable sitting. But the worst part was when I went to bed, and I tried to lay down on my right side. The pain just radiated. It wasn't a sharp pain, but it was just this horrible, horrible ache. Now, the crazy thing was, it didn't hurt when I was walking or working out or when I was running, but it did show up if I was sitting too long or again, trying to sleep on that side. And if you're someone who kind of rolls around in the middle of the night, like I do, it was crazy. And truly, the second I lay down, I'd be fine all day long, moving around, doing the laundry and cleaning, and even sitting at my computer here and there. I tend to get up a bit if I can. As soon as I lay down, bam, instant agony. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. And so, as an athlete, I figured that's probably bursitis or maybe even arthritis. I didn't really want to go there. But as a health conscious person, and actually I was a massage therapist at one point, I tried massage, heat therapy, stretching, 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 more massage, more heat, nothing worked. I even stopped running thinking that maybe it was, DOMS, delayed onset of, hold on, I can't even think of what DOMS means anymore. Delayed onset of muscle pain, muscle stress, it means that it delayed pain. So I was just about to make an appointment with a doctor, and this is crazy. Thank you, universe. I get an email from a company that I trust. I've been following this company. I've been using this company for supplements for many, many years. And the email described exactly what I was feeling. And so, of course, I followed the breadcrumb trail of the internet, did my research, and then he finally had a name for what I was experiencing. Got this one, gluteal tendinopathy. Big long word. Well, two words actually. So what the heck is this? It basically is degeneration or a degenerative condition of the gluteal, yes, your tushy, tendons. But of course, all of your muscles, especially when you're thinking glutes and hamstrings, all of those muscles are connected. Connected to both too, but they're all connected. So it's the gluteus medius and minimus specifically, not gluteus maximus, which is, I guess, further on. But these are the smaller muscles, and they attach to the outer part of your hip, hence the hip pain, right? Tendons are responsible for your pelvic stability, right? Every time you stand on one leg, walking upstairs, they're working. Your tendons are working. Yes, of course, your muscles are too, but over time, what happens, especially in midlife, you're going to be amazed by this. They start to break down faster than they can repair. It's not inflammation like bursitis, which is what I initially thought. It's not a torn muscle. It's literally tendon degeneration, right? Degeneration. It's basically falling apart. And it can really feel like I experienced like this really deep ache that radiates down the side of your thigh. It can show up when you're resting and not moving. For me, it really was mostly when I was laying down. So why is the menopause mentor talking about this? Because, ladies, for those of us who are in our 40s, 50s, even in our early 60s, gluteal tendinopathy is much more common. It's actually much more common, you're going to love this, in postmenopausal women. So, ladies, remember, menopause is that one day, 12 months after you've had your last period, right? That day you are menopausal. You're experiencing menopause. That very next day, you are postmenopausal. So I'm 3 years postmenopausal. Coincidence here? No, of course not. Because why? estrogen plays a huge role in tendon health. And I talked about this in a few other podcasts. Estrogen has plays so many different roles in our body, right? It's not just to have a baby and all the sex hormones and life. It actually is, estrogen is the hormone of life, our life, not just creating one, right? So actually, when estrogen declines in perimenopause and your menopause day, collagen production drops. We notice that in our face, right, ladies? Tendons become less elastic and more brittle. That's why you might start to experience more injury. So you have to really pay attention when you're working out or exercising that you're warming up and cooling down properly, right? Healing slows. We know this as we get older, it takes longer to heal. And the entire tendon, I'm going to call it a matrix, the way it all kind of is together, becomes much more vulnerable to stress. Our whole body is more vulnerable to stress. This particular stress is more physical stress, but emotional stress always plays a role as well. It's not exactly that your body is your body is breaking down because you're getting older, even though you're getting older. It really is shifting because of these hormonal changes. And of course, I say this all the time, you're aging, is it aging or is it menopause? Well, if you're aging, eventually you're going to hit menopause. You're not going to be menopausal unless you're aging. So a lot of it goes together. It's really difficult sometimes to separate them both. We know that estrogen plays a role here. So there tends to be, a ripple effect, right, with all of this. And of course, the gluteal tendons are under constant load, right, every day. Like even if you're sitting on them, I guess, sitting, standing, walking, running, climbing stairs, all of those things that we do every day as a part of our regular day. These are things that can affect our gluteal tendons. Why it's often missed. This is something that when I actually talked to my doctor, we chatted about this. We did a visit, a Zoom visit. It was kind of interesting. First time I ever saw a doctor that way. But initially, with the initial consultation that we had, it wasn't, or the initial part of the consultation, something that she really understood, or not that she didn't understand. Part of it, she didn't understand it until I mentioned it. But it just is something that it's not the first thing that most doctors will come to the conclusion, come to that conclusion. If you're seeing a PC, it's really not their area of expertise, right? You have to remember, a primary care doctor, they're really good if you have a cold or bumps and bruises, things like that. They're really great at referring you to someone who is a specialist. So of course I was talking to a PC. Once I mentioned this to her, because I had done my research, I was able to talk to somebody in the ortho department that made more sense to talk to. But it's often misdiagnosed or completely dismissed. Again, it's not something that I don't know. It's common. It happens. But again, anything that has to do with menopause, most physicians really don't have any knowledge on. They always connect that lateral hip pain, or they never expect that gluteal hip pain and menopause are connected, right? They're going to tell you probably have arthritis, maybe sciatica, which doesn't make sense because I guess sciatica does kind of run that way, which sciatica is usually like the impingement of the piriformis muscle. So a lot of stretching, and there are ways to get rid of that. But this is not that. Sciatica is more sharp, right? This is the pain that I'm talking about with gluteal tendinopathy is really more of an ache. Anyway, so most of the time when we are experiencing these issues, this particular pain, we don't even know what to ask. We kind of tell them, this is what I feel, and they go, oh, okay. And one, pain is not normal, right? It is real. Gluteal tendinopathy is real. Again, misinterpreted. And if it's not treated properly, it could actually linger for months or years. Crazy thought, right? when you have an injury, usually it takes this amount of time and you're fixed, right? You're healed. But when you think about menopause, physicians think mostly hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, you're not sleeping, but hip pain is totally like not even on the radar, even for the good doctors who understanding a little bit or learning a little bit more about menopause and what it does. So of course, hormones, biomechanics, activity level, posture. I can, kind of sit kind of hunched at my desk sometimes. That's not always a good thing. Previous injuries, all of these things are really frustrating, but they can actually cause the problem, and they can also delay healing, right? So how, now that you might have this, right, what do you do about it, right? Obviously, the first person you want to talk to your doctor, maybe talk to a physical therapist. And this is what worked for me, just to know. So yes, there is good news. Again, once I understood what was going on, I could support my body the right way. I talk about that so often. We need to support our bodies. When we were 15 and 20 and 25, we could eat the way we wanted. Didn't matter if we didn't get enough sleep, right? What stress did we have when we were 15 or 16? Not a ton, right? So supporting our body then, that wasn't even in our wheelhouse. But at this stage in our life, we really have to be much more thoughtful about how we are supporting our body. Um, progressive strength training, progressive strength training program. That is truly what healed me. And this is information I got from a PT, where we focused on isometric and isotonic exercises for the gluteal muscles. Who would have thunk that your glute muscles could be weak? Who knew, right? But things like hip bridges, standing hip hikes, what else did we do? Band resisted glute work, with one of those rubbery bands. These exercises help to build tendon, I guess, the tolerance, I guess we're going to say. It obviously restores strength and improves pelvic stability. For your pelvis, if your pelvis is kind of moving a little, wiggly jiggly, that's going to affect the way you walk. And if you're the way you walk, or the way you walk is going to affect the way you run. It's going to affect the way you walk upstairs. It's going to affect the way you do everything, right? And that's actually going to put your body out of alignment. And it's a very often body alignment that kind of starts this cascading problem, and turns out to be the gluteal tendinopathy. Couple of things, of course, that the doctor said. This was not my PT, but this was the doctor. Apply heat to the painful area. Yeah. Okay. That was, we knew that. I loved this one. Avoid sitting in low chairs. Where are we going? In elementary school, we had these teeny little chairs, but okay, that was one of the recommendations, right? But apparently it can increase the compression on your hip. So don't sit on low chairs, right? Or who knows? If you are experiencing pain, try not to climb the stairs, which I don't love to say that out loud, because usually, especially when we're talking about lifestyle, I want you to climb the stairs. But obviously, if it's painful, don't do that. That's okay to take the elevator. Don't cross your legs when you're sitting, because it actually puts pressure on the area in question. And of course, they did say to sleep with a pillow between your knees. That's supposed to help support, it supports your pelvis, but it does support your hip and your legs. So these are things that we can do on a daily basis when we're when we have this pain. But obviously, doing glute bridges, hip hikes, banded glute work on a regular basis actually is a great way to avoid this challenge, right? I've been doing lots of exercises for years, right? I have to tell you, I've never really been a fan of the glute bridge. I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't feel anything. Yeah, so what? I'm a runner, so I always think, I've got, good tight glutes. Well, I was wrong. And now I understand. So I would say if you're doing a regular workout. Throw these in every couple of days, maybe even once a week or twice a week, but these are great things to do to, again, build, restore strength, improve flexibility, and really work those tendons, right? Not just the muscles, but the tendons as well. What else? Okay, so most of the stuff that I said isn't really fancy schmancy, right? These are things that we can do on our own at home. Now, if you do have a PT, a physical therapist, work with your physical therapist. I think that's a great idea. It's always good to have somebody to see what you're doing and how your body alignment is. So that, especially in the beginning, if you're experiencing this, definitely something to consider, right? These are definitely small, smart shifts. And basically, it kind of lets your tendons heal probably a little bit more slowly, but they're going to heal more effectively. So what happened with me? Couple months down the road, yes, I can finally sleep on my side again. I can sit on a plane without fidgeting the whole time. And I feel stronger coming off of the injury. Call it an injury, I guess it is an injury, right? Coming off of the injury than I did before, because I am working on smaller muscle groups and tendons that I had not worked in most of my life. Running, you work on the big muscles. And that's really what I've always focused on, I guess, are the bigger muscles. When I worked out with trainers in the past, we focus on bigger muscles. The person that I work out with now, she's amazing. We do sometimes full sessions where we're just working on small muscles and working with small muscles with really low weights. But they're muscles that are necessary, but don't often get overpowered very often by the big muscles, so they get weak. So what else? If you're sitting there thinking, this sounds like me, I think I may have this. Just understand, as we get older, these things happen. Estrogen is a huge challenge when it comes to overall health. As it's declining, we really need to be more thoughtful and understand more. Gluteal tendinopathy is common, right? But it's also manageable with the right knowledge, hopefully some that I've given you today, the right support, and body aware plan. Some of the things that we just talked about, things that work with your hormones, not against it, right? We want to think smarter, not harder, right? And truly, you're not meant to suffer through this. So if your doctor is telling you, oh, it's just arthritis, oh, it's just getting older, just take some Tylenol, you may want to rethink listening to that person and maybe find somebody else who might be able to really work with you. Truly, pain is not part of aging. We're not meant to be in pain. And so let's work on ways to avoid pain. And when we do find ourselves in pain, holistic ways to get ourselves out of pain, right? We deserve clarity, but more importantly, we deserve relief and really be able to enjoy life and really feel comfortable, like feel at home in our bodies again. So if any of this resonated with you, please share with a friend, a family member. I've actually written a full article about this on my website, denisestegall.com. So if you take a look, you can go there to the blog. I will link that to the show notes. So please read through that. And if this is something that you think you're dealing with, talk to your doctor, right? Talk to your PT, and definitely don't let it go any longer without taking some, kind of like taking it into your hands and saying, you know what, I can fix this, I can do this, and do so. If you need any support, I'm here for you. I'm Denise Stegall, the menopause mentor. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope you always realize that you are strong, you are wise, and you are not alone on this journey called menopause. I'll see you soon. Till next time, I leave you with healthy living, happy life. Have a great day.